To understand the horror of Agathocles' end, you have to step back into the chaotic, sun-baked world of the 4th century BC. This was the twilight of the Greek classical age, a time when the great city-states of Athens and Sparta were shadows of their former selves. In their place rose ambitious, militaristic powers, none more formidable in the western Mediterranean than Syracuse, perched on the eastern coast of Sicily. Syracuse wasn't just a city. It was a superpower in its own right, a wealthy, fortified hub of trade, culture, and, most importantly, war. Sicily itself was a prize everyone wanted. To the north lay the rising Roman Republic, still consolidating its power on the Italian mainland. To the south, across the narrow strait, was the mighty Carthaginian Empire, a thalassocracy built on trade, naval power, and a ruthless will to dominate. Caught between these two giants, the Greek cities of Sicily were in a constant state of flux, allying, betraying, and fighting for survival. It was a world where a strong man could seize control overnight, and where loyalty was a currency as fleeting as the tide. This was the world Agathocles was born into in 361 BC. He was not of noble birth. His father was a potter, a common tradesman. In the rigid social hierarchy of the ancient world, this should have been a life sentence to obscurity. But Agathocles was different. He was handsome, charismatic, and possessed a terrifying, almost supernatural drive. He saw the chaos of Syracuse not as a threat, but as an opportunity. He joined the army, rose through the ranks with a mix of bravery and brutality, and quickly learned that in a city drowning in political intrigue, the quickest path to the top was paved with the bodies of your enemies. His first attempt at seizing power in 317 BC was a bloody coup. He and his mercenaries stormed the city, slaughtering the ruling oligarchy in the streets. He didn't just kill them, he made a spectacle of it. Their bodies were left to rot in the public square, a grim message to anyone who would dare oppose him. He declared himself strategos autocrator, general with absolute power, but everyone knew the truth. He was a tyrant. And for the next 30 years, he ruled Syracuse with a combination of military genius and savage cruelty that would make even the most hardened warlord flinch. He waged a relentless, decades-long war against Carthage, taking the fight to their homeland in North Africa in a daring and unprecedented invasion. He lost his entire army there, but somehow escaped back to Sicily to fight another day. He murdered his own son when he suspected him of plotting against him. He married multiple times, using his wives as political pawns and discarding them when they were no longer useful. He was a man who trusted no one and was trusted by no one in return. His court was a viper's nest of spies, informers, and would-be assassins. By the time he reached his late 70s, his body was a map of old wounds, his mind a fortress of paranoia, and his kingdom a powder keg waiting for a spark. The stage was set for a final act that would be as dramatic and horrifying as anything in his life. The year is 289 BC. Agathocles is 72 years old, an extraordinary age for the time, especially for a man who had lived a life of constant warfare and stress. His once powerful frame is now frail, his legendary energy replaced by a deep, bone-weary fatigue. He knows his time is short. The question that haunts his every waking moment isn't whether he will die, but what will happen to his legacy, to his kingdom, and to his family after he's gone. He has spent his life building a personal empire, and he is terrified of its collapse. His chosen heir is his grandson, Agathocles, the son of his murdered son. It's a decision born of desperation and guilt, a feeble attempt to atone for his past sins. But in the treacherous world of Syracusan politics, this plan is doomed from the start. Agathocles is young, inexperienced, and, crucially, deeply unpopular. The nobles he's supposed to rule despise him, seeing him as a weak extension of his grandfather's tyrannical regime. The common people, who once cheered Agathocles as a champion against Carthage, now see only a corrupt, aging despot. Agathocles, sensing the growing unrest, tries to secure his grandson's position. He calls a public assembly, a rare move for a tyrant, and attempts to rally the citizens to his heir's cause. But his voice, once commanding legions, now cracks with age and illness. His words fall flat. The crowd is silent, their faces unreadable masks of resentment. He returns to his palace, a cold dread settling in his gut. He is losing control and he knows it. It is at this moment of supreme vulnerability that his body begins to betray him in the most horrific way imaginable. Ancient historians, most notably Diodorus Siculus, our primary source for these events, describe his final illness with chilling clinical detail. It wasn't a simple fever or a sudden stroke. It was a slow, agonizing process of internal decay. The disease, which modern scholars speculate could have been a severe case of gangrene, a systemic infection like sepsis, or perhaps even a form of necrotizing fasciitis, the dreaded flesh-eating bacteria, began to consume him from the inside out. His skin turned black and putrid. Open sores erupted across his body, oozing a foul-smelling pus that attracted swarms of flies. The stench of his own rotting flesh filled his bedchamber, a constant, nauseating reminder of his mortality. And the worst part? His mind remained sharp. He was fully conscious, fully aware of the horror unfolding on his own body. He could feel the maggots wriggling in his wounds, hear the buzzing of the insects that feasted on him while he was still alive. He was trapped in a living tomb of his own decaying flesh. In his delirium and pain, his paranoia, already a defining feature of his personality, explodes into full-blown madness. He becomes convinced that his death is not natural, that he is being poisoned. And in his fevered state, he points the finger at the one person he believes has the most to gain from his demise. His own grandson, Archagathus. It's a tragic irony. He had spent his life orchestrating the murders of countless others. And now, in his final moments, he imagines himself as the victim of the same treachery. His accusations are not quiet whispers. They are public, furious denunciations. From his deathbed, he rails against Archagathus, calling him a traitor and a murderer. In the toxic atmosphere of the Syracusan court, these words are like a lit match thrown into a barrel of gunpowder. The nobles, who already hated the young heir, now have the perfect justification to move against him. They don't need proof. The dying word of the tyrant is enough. What happens next is a direct consequence of Agathocles' final paranoid outburst. His grandson, terrified and cornered, makes a fatal mistake. Believing his own life is in immediate danger from the vengeful nobles his grandfather has just incited, Archagathus decides to strike first. He orders the assassination of his main rival, Agathocles' other grandson, effectively signing his own death warrant. This act of preemptive violence confirms everyone's worst fears about his character and his fitness to rule. The result is chaos, with Agathocles finally succumbing to his gruesome illness. His body a testament to a life of violence now turned inward, Syracuse plunges into a bloody civil war. Archagathus is hunted down and killed within days of his grandfather's death. The kingdom Agathocles had built through decades of war and cunning collapses almost overnight, torn apart by the very forces of ambition and betrayal he had cultivated his entire life. His final, rotting days weren't just a personal tragedy. They were the catalyst for the destruction of his entire dynasty. The tyrant who had defied Carthage and reshaped Sicily died not on a battlefield, but in a stinking, fly-infested room, his last act one of accusation that doomed his own bloodline. Now, let's leap forward over 1,800 years, to the cold, damp courts of Tudor England. The parallels between Agathocles and King Henry VIII are not in their deeds. Their worlds, cultures, and methods of rule were vastly different, but in the nature of their final years and the way their bodies became a physical manifestation of their inner corruption. Henry VIII, in his youth, was the Golden Prince of Europe. Tall, athletic, intelligent, and charismatic. He was a Renaissance king, a patron of the arts, a skilled musician, and a formidable juster. But over the course of his 38-year reign, his obsession with securing a male heir led him down a path of tyranny that would have made Agathocles nod in grim recognition. He broke with the Catholic Church, dissolved the monasteries, and executed 2 of his 6 wives along with countless advisors and nobles who crossed him. His court, like Agathocles, became a place of fear and suspicion. And then his body began to fail him. A jousting accident in his 30s left him with a chronic, ulcerous leg wound that never healed. This injury, a constant source of pain and infection, is believed to have contributed to a profound personality change, turning the once vibrant king into a paranoid, obese, and cruel tyrant in his later years. By the time of his death in 1547 at the age of 55, Henry was a monstrous figure. He weighed close to 400 pounds. His leg ulcers were so severe and putrid that they reportedly had to be drained with a special chair equipped with a hole for his leg. The stench from his body was said to be so overwhelming that it filled entire rooms, forcing his attendants to hold cloths to their faces. Like Agathocles, Henry's mind remained active until the end, trapped in a body that was a prison of pain and decay. He was obsessed with his legacy, his succession, and the security of his young son, Edward. He, too, died a suspicious and paranoid man, having signed the death warrants of many who had once been his closest friends. His final journey to his burial place was a macabre event in itself. His coffin leaked fluid onto the floor of the chapel where it was temporarily stored, and his body exploded in its vault due to the gases of decomposition. Both men, separated by centuries and continents, met a similar symbolic end. Their immense power, their unchecked appetites, and their ruthless pursuit of control ultimately turned inward, consuming them physically just as their policies had consumed their kingdoms spiritually and politically. Their bodies, in their final, rotting states, became a grotesque monument to the cost of absolute power. They were rulers who had mastered the world around them, only to be utterly defeated by the frail, mortal shell they inhabited.